This conference will now be recorded.
Okay. Hi, friends. Can you all hear me? Hi, guys. Can you hear me? Can
Yes,
someone
Shankar.
confirm this?
Yes, Shankar.
Yes, yes.
Hi, Shankar. I can hear you.
Okay. So let us get started. Today I'm going to cover virtualization basics. So before I start off, I just want to check with you guys. Is any of you are already aware of virtualization by any chance? What is virtualization? Do you know?
Uh, Hi, Shankar. So virtualization is something like making physical elements into virtual and making use of the resources.
Yeah. So how do you virtualize the physical to virtual?
It depends upon the technology. See, actually, I'm basically from VMware admin. So I used to do so Hyper-V has installed on top of that physical host. On top of that, we will be deploying the VMs. So it is something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. So yeah. So first of all, what is the necessity of virtualizing resources? So why do we really do this? Because you already have physical servers. What is the requirement or what is the necessity of virtualizing your resources or your physical servers? Can you answer that as well?
Yeah, sure. Actually, I was waiting for some answer. So, see, virtualization is something. So we have a physical environment. So we will multiple servers on that. So where we can use the single component into the multiple resources. Like, see, if we have one ESX host, we can deploy n number of VMs on it. So as per the configuration, so it will make you use of the resource to different applications and different servers. So it will reduce the cost, it will reduce the risk, and so it will so very flexible wherever you can, so you can access with the I mean, so just providing IP address of the server and using the username and password. Just you need an internet connectivity. That's it.
Correct.
Feasible, flexible, scalability, security as well. So, but the physical environment has to be managed by the some company whom we are using.
Yeah. Okay. So I share my screen. Can you all see my screen?
Yes, yes. बढ़िया हूँ मैं.
Okay. So whatever you said is correct. So if you again, we talked about two things, right? Yesterday, I talked about different clouds: public cloud, private cloud, and public cloud. So I said in private cloud, you'll have your own data center. Within your data center, you'll have your servers. So this building, you will be the owner. Either you will lease it or you will own it. So that is private to you. Public cloud, so it will be owned by, data center will be owned by cloud provider like Microsoft. They will have bunch of servers, and they will share, they will sell these servers, or they will rent these servers to the general public users. Okay, so we also will be one of the user who actually rent these services, and we pay as you go model, right? So first of all, how this transition happened in private cloud? What was the main reason for the all the users, all the customers moving from private cloud to public cloud? And in private cloud, what are the challenges that we had earlier, maybe 10 years before? What are the challenges? How we have overcome those challenges, and what challenges have come newly, and how we overcome by moving to public cloud. So we'll discuss. I will start from that note. So if you take, if you take probably 10 or 15 years ago, uh, we used to have physical servers. So in every data center, we used to have physical server. For that physical servers, you have to purchase the physical server. Let's say you have one server. This is one hardware. On top of one hardware, you will have one operating system. You'll have one operating system, and then you'll have, on top of this, you'll have one application. So this is the typical setup in those days. So you'll purchase one hardware. Again, hardware will be with some configuration like CPU memory, and all that. So on top of that, you'll install OS like maybe Windows or Linux, and then you will, if you're if you want to host a web server, you will host web server, or else any other application server that you want to host, you'll host on this server. So on one server, you typically have one application, mainly, mostly, okay, in a general scenario. So for this setup, if you want to set up, let's say your company requires 10, they have some 10 different websites or 10 different applications they want to host all these, then you need to get a similar setup. You need to get a similar setup, 10 different setups or 20 different setups based on your requirement. For one single setup, you purchase the hardware. Again, I talked about the procedure, right? So when you want to purchase the hardware, how do you do that? Is you will first of all, what do you say? You will first of all get approval from your business team and finance team. Then you will start. You will purchase it. You will procure it, and then you get the hardware. Once you get, typically how this will be is, let's say your application requires 8 GB of, let's say your application required 8 GB of memory, and let's say 2 CPUs, okay, computer processing units. Typically, how the order will look like is, the companies will always think about forecasting, right? So let's say they'll think about future. So they can anticipate, like, in future if the demand increases, again they cannot change the server, right? That's why what they do is they will actually purchase a little bigger one. So if your requirement is 8 GB and 2 CPUs, so they'll typically purchase 16 GB with the 4 CPUs, or they also might purchase 32 GB RAM with 8 CPUs. So they'll purchase a bigger machine, okay? Because in future, again, if the demand increases, they really cannot replace that with a bigger one, right? So they'll again have to invest money. So they purchase a bigger one. So usual cases, okay? So because if they anticipate in next 1 or 2 years, they anticipate the company grows and end users increases, demand increases, then definitely they need a bigger machine, right? So they will actually purchase a bigger ones. When they purchase a bigger one, let's say they configure this bigger one, this machine. On top of that, you'll have IT experts to actually install operating system and all that. And on top of that, you'll have one application. Okay. Over this, as I said, if your application requires only 8 GB, 2 CPUs, so your utilization of the server, utilization of the physical servers will always be, if you just compare, it will be less than somewhere around 40%. It will be always less than 40%. So you have rest of 60% of resources. When I say 60% of resources, 24 GB of memory and almost 6 CPUs, 24 GB of memory and 6 CPUs are currently unused on your physical server. So these are unused. We call it a server crawling. Server crawling is nothing but uh, server crawling is nothing but you are not utilizing full capacity of your servers. Okay, you're only utilizing some, percentage of some portion of your actual capacity. That's nothing but server crawling. So this used to happen with all the servers. It's not just for one single physical server. In a study, it has been identified that uh, in those days, in a study, it has been identified that on all physical servers in all companies, only 40%, only 40% of physical resources. When I say physical resources, are CPU, memory nothing but RAM you also can consider, okay, and disk. So only 40% of these resources are being utilized, and rest 60% is being wasted. So it is not at all being utilized. So that is when this thought of virtualization concept has come in picture, because you are purchasing hardware but you are not fully utilizing them. So a lot of money is being wasted there, because every time you need an application, you purchase a new one. Every time purchase a new server and you configure it. But when the application requirement is gone, if the application is no longer required, you really cannot sell the hardware. If you sell the hardware, so your resale price will drastically decrease, right? So either you have to completely format or completely wipe it out and then reconfigure everything. So that again will take some time. Physical servers itself will take time for everything, installing operating system, configure and doing all that. Because so you will be, so let's say you as an engineer will be sitting in Hyderabad, but your company maybe you are working for a company, a UK based or US based company. They have data centers in UK or US. You'll be sitting here. You have to access those physical servers in a remote management. Depends on the manufacturer. Dell will provide ILO. IBM will provide RSA. So different companies will provide different mechanisms to access your physical hardware, console of your physical server. So you have to, coordinate with your the local team and get that installed, do all that stuff. Okay, so why we are talking about all this, because to that is when because we are not fully utilizing your physical capacity of the server, and also it is taking time to create or destroy any services, any applications or machines. That is when this concept called virtualization concept is brought in the picture. So if I'm not wrong, virtualization is actually invented by IBM long back. So they have invented it. But later on, there is this company, VMware company. I think previously Tejas has mentioned, right? So the company VMware is actually very famous for this server virtualization. So VMware company has got uh, so in the virtualization concept, what happens is, so you will have a physical server hardware. So let's say this is a hardware. So in hardware, on top of hardware, you'll have a hypervisor. So this hypervisor, you can say it's a software or it's off. I will say it's a software which separates your physical hardware with the operating system. So you'll have operating system, right? A software which actually your separates your hardware with the operating system. That's actually an hypervisor. So this hypervisor, what it does is it will mask your hardware resources like CPU, memory, storage, network, all that, and then it will actually virtualize those hardware resources in a virtualized resources, and it provides the virtualized resources to your virtual VMs. So then, instead you creating one single operating system, you actually can create so multiple servers. In previous case, we have created one single VM, right? So in this case, you can create multiple. In the previous case, we have created one single server, one single application on top of one hardware. But here, because of this hypervisor, it actually hides your masks your hardware resources. Then it actually will help in creating multiple VMs. So these I call them as VMs. Why do I call VM? VM is nothing but virtual machine. So something it is virtual. It's not physically existing. So you really don't have a physically existing three servers. You just have only one server, but on top of the server you have a hypervisor installed. That hypervisor actually is providing your physical servers in a virtualized way. Like so here instead of RAM we call it as so we virtual memory we call it as virtual memory we call it as, and we call it as CPU we call it as vCPU, virtual CPU. Disk again, so disk you get a storage directly, but NIC you call it as virtual NIC, so virtual network interface card. So everything will be virtual, but this works exactly similar to your physical servers. There is no there is no problem in that. So the way your application really runs in a previous, if you look at a previous example only, let's say we purchase 32 GB of RAM and 8 CPUs. Okay, so in this case, if you give, so let's say this application requires 8 GB and 2 CPUs, and this one also requires 8 GB, 2 CPUs, and this also requires 8 GB, 2 CPUs. So in this case, in a previous case, we are only able to use for one application, and the rest 24 GB is being wasted. That's what we discussed. But in current scenario, with the virtualization concept, so you can you can actually distribute this 32 GB like 8 GB, 8 GB, 8 GB, and you will be left with 8 GB. That is for your hypervisor host operating system, and then CPUs also you can similarly distribute, right? So this way you are sharing your resources, you are creating multiple VMs, you are actually utilizing your physical hardware resources properly. So you're improving that utilization. So from 40% to 70 or 80%. We should not go to 100%. If you go to 100%, you will experience some performance issues. But increasing from 40 to 80% is a good achievement with a hypervisor. So with this, let's say if you need three applications, in previous case you need to purchase three hardwares. Let's say if you spend 10 lakh rupee for one hardware, you have to spend 30 lakhs there, right? But here, with the same 10 lakh rupee investment on single server only, you are able to create a three VMs, three virtual machines. And let's say you actually created this virtual machine for some application, xyz.com application, website. So then you realize that that website is no longer required. That website testing is everything is done. You really no longer require that website. So in a previous case, in that case, when you purchase this hardware and you configure the application, you used it. After 2-3 months, you realize that it is no longer required. So then what do? You will simply wipe it off. Wipe it off, like you will format your entire setup, and if you have any other application requirement, you will go ahead and install it on top of that. But this formatting and installing will take time. It will take hours of time at least. So in a current scenario with a virtual machine, so you can easily create it in less time. You can also easily destroy it. So because you can just simply destroy it. So when we say virtual machine, mainly these virtual machines actually works with the files, because you will have virtual hard disk files. So it works with only virtualized files only. So all you just do is simply delete it. So when you delete it, it will be immediately deleted, and you will be able to immediately create a new server, whatever you really want to create. So that is another advantage. So, uh, this concept. Any questions, guys? Do you have any questions? Hello, can you all hear me?
Yes, Shankar, yes.
Yeah. Any questions that you guys have? Okay. So,
Hi, Shankar.
that sorry.
Shankar Bala here.
Yeah. Yeah. Tell me, Paula.
So for the setup, it was configured with 32 GB and 8 CPUs for the hardware requirement. So say suppose if the requirement is more than whatever we have configured there. So in that scenario, how it will work?
Yeah. So when you say requirement is more, you're saying your VM's requirement is more, or that's what you're saying, right?
No, no. Not VM's requirement. The physical requirement initially, the hardware is 32 GB and 8 GB RAM, right? If we want to increase the
32 GB to a higher size.
yes,
Yeah. Usually, there is a process. So you'll have a slots, RAM slots. So if you have those slots, you can actually insert bigger size RAMs. But again, that depends. Usually, once you create a server and once you purchase the physical hardware, you really do not touch it. You do not try to increase that. Rather, you will actually purchase a new hardware, separate hardware. So yeah, so if you have some additional requirement later on, so most probably you will actually purchase a new hardware with a bigger size. You will, of course, you will use your primary one. Along with that, you will also have the secondary, another hardware. On top of that, you will have a different set of applications configured. You will put balance. That is where clustering concept will come. So I will discuss about that. I'll just give you a brief about that.
okay, sure. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions that you have?
No, Shankar, that's it.
Okay. So I said this virtualization concept is brought in, and I also talked about a company which is VMware. They have this virtualization software which is called ESXi. So ESXi is a hypervisor that they use. So you have multiple players in the market who actually does this virtualization. I would say one VMware, two Hyper-V from Microsoft, three you have Zen from Citrix. So four you have Oracle also does some virtualization. You have IBM. You have so different companies does it, but famous ones are these two, I would say. So this is famous. They have I mean, it has become famous because the features that it provides. So you'll have a I mean, on a physical hardware you install a ESXi host operating system, and on top of that you will be able to create multiple VMs. So that's how VMware setup looks like, and you'll have a very nice graphical user interface for operating that as well. So similarly, Hyper-V, Microsoft also offers one hypervisor, which is called Hyper-V. So this is something like on your existing Windows server only. So you will have one feature. If you go to roles, you have one feature called Hyper-V. If you enable that Hyper-V, and then you will be able to create, virtual machines on top of your existing physical servers. So you don't have to do uninstall, you don't have to do a reinstallation or things like that. So on your existing operating system only, you can actually enable that, and you can create the VMs on top of that. So because we are learning Microsoft Azure. Microsoft fully uses, because these virtualization softwares are licensed software. You have to pay a lot of money for that, because you get this benefit. These companies will actually uh, they actually gain a business by selling these licensed softwares, right? So even that, but Microsoft, they have their own product, so they don't really actually purchase any other licensed other softwares, right? They try to they use their own product, which is Hyper-V. So Hyper-V is a product from Microsoft. That is, the product is being used in the public cloud. In the, let's say, in Azure, you create a VM. In the background, on top of physical servers, this Hyper-V will be used, and it will be created. It will create a virtual machine and will be handed over to you. So that's a process it follows. Okay. So there are the yeah, so that's pretty much about hypervisor. Um, so uh, just to simply understand, you really don't have to dig deep and try to understand very deep. A very basic understanding here is, um, we have long back we have physical server setup. So those physical servers are being virtualized using hypervisor, because you have some disadvantages there. You are not utilizing full capacity. To utilize the full capacity, you're also, I mean, uh, time it takes to create, a time it takes to destroy your servers or applications also takes time, and also the real estate, uh, the space it occupies. So when you have 10 physical servers, it occupies much bigger space, right? But if you just have only two or three servers, and on top of two three servers you configure hypervisor and then you configure the applications, it only occupies less space, right, compared to physical servers. So that is another advantage that you get. All these will relate to your cost benefit. So all these companies will actually utilize or use these technologies, because to improve the amount that they spend on this these servers, right? So definitely they see some profit. That's why they use it. Otherwise, they don't use it, right? So uh, yeah, so this virtualization concept has been great. I think 10 years before, it has been, in a, what do you say, like a revolution those days. But over the period of time, what happened? Then the cloud business has come. So cloud business was introduced in 2000. Again, cloud was also introduced long back. IBM has their own cloud, but IBM has not, sold cloud to any other. The services to any other customer. But in 2006, AWS, Amazon has introduced this. So I would say, the thought behind introducing this cloud because, right, Amazon has every year end, you have a very great sales in, you have a lot of sales in US, right? Every year end, I think, Christmas season, you have a lot of sales in Amazon.com in US. So let's say if the Amazon.com website requires, generally, let's say that application requires maybe 100 servers, just only for example, 100 servers in a usual case in a throughout year, but on the newer sales, it would at least require 500 servers. The demand increases rapidly, right? So that's actually one of the things that Amazon has, because newer season, a lot of people will actually try to access the website and purchase and do all that. So in this scenario, what happens? Amazon as a company, so initially throughout the year they just need only 100 servers, but only for a 1 month duration or 1.5 month duration they need 500 servers. So just for this 1 month or 1.5 month, they have to purchase 500 servers, right? They cannot just rent. They don't know where to rent. There is no service as such, so they just have to purchase. So they purchase 500 servers, for example, and these 500 servers, they really they only use it for 1.5 months time. And once January comes, once January ends, then again until next November or December, these servers will be idle. You don't use it for any other purpose. They are just idle. Then the thought comes in during these days, like why can't we rent these servers? Someone unmuted. Yeah, you want to ask me a question? Okay. So when you have these servers which are unused for almost 11 months or 10 and a half months, why can't you rent these servers to others? Then the thought comes this AWS cloud business. So this cloud business, the purpose, because when Amazon actually purchases those servers, Amazon doesn't have any cloud provider who can sell these machines and not give those machines on a rental purpose, right? Now Amazon, they themselves introduced this cloud business. They started building big data centers because once you see profit, once you see the profitable business, you rapidly uh, uh, increase the servers and start selling all the servers. So when Amazon introduced, there is no other cloud business at all. So almost for about 5 years, there is no other company has a cloud business. Only Amazon is doing business, and all the customers, because you only have one player in the market, so everybody go to Amazon. So a lot of people have started using that. So for until 2011, in 2011, Microsoft is introduced Azure. So, but in I told you, right? Azure has two versions, like yeah, Azure 2. I would say Azure 1.0, Azure 2.0. Azure 1.0 duration is like 2011 to 2014. In those days, it has used the ASM model. So now you understood why the transition to cloud has come into picture, because so one thing, if you think about on a cloud provider side, they have actually started like this. But on a cloud, user side, like we as a customers, we actually use cloud user side. I will talk about those benefits. Yesterday, I talked about those benefits already, like cost benefit, global reach, security, reliability, all that disaster recovery, all that I already covered. Why do you? What are the advantages of the cloud business? So your previous virtualization concept is great. You are able to save some money. You are able to uh, efficiently manage it, but there is still some improvement required. So because when you are using cloud business, when you are using your same VMs in cloud, you are able to save much more money, because in on-premises, to manage the virtualization, you need expertise. Like Tejas is working as a VMware administrator, you need some expert who actually knows that virtualization concept. Okay, and at the same time, you also would need you need to purchase the licensing. Again, you're investing. Yeah, guys, if you don't have a question, please go on. Okay, and you also have to install purchase the licensing. So these will be. Yeah, I think someone unmuted. Do you have any questions? Sai? Okay. So that's how cloud business started, and users. Why does all the customers? Why all these customers are moving towards cloud? Because they see some advantage in terms of cost benefit, in terms of management, in terms of uh, global reach and reliability. So all the security, all these benefits they see in a cloud business. That's why they started moving towards cloud. And when all these companies see some profit or benefit, only then those companies will move towards cloud. So tomorrow, after 5 years, if there is some other technology or something else comes up which actually save additional money, which saves money, again the companies will start moving towards this. So that because in cloud again you have containers and all that, right? So that is also one of the revolution. So I mean, every time companies will try to change according to the requirement or market trends. Okay, so that's how cloud business has started. So Microsoft has a Hyper-V product. Each cloud providers have their own hypervisor, which actually virtualize your physical servers and create the virtual machines. Similarly, Microsoft has also got Hyper-V as a hypervisor, and using that you create a VMs. So that is a pretty much about virtualization concept. Uh, yeah, I talked about this one, right? So initially, Microsoft is introduced ASM model, Azure Service Manager, we call it as. So this model was not built properly. There are a lot of drawbacks in it. So they learned from it, and within 3 years' time, they bought a new model called ARM, Azure Resource Management. Currently, we are using this one. This is already retired because it's been 2014 and this is introduced, and this ASM model is retired, I think, couple of years ago. Now we only have one single model, which is the ARM model, and this is I mean lot of because they learned from these drawbacks, they have built it very nicely, and that's when they started seeing a lot of companies moving towards Azure. So that's the because initially you only have one player in the market, but now there are multiple players in the market. So all these companies have the options. So where they want to move, why they want to move, all these they will start comparing, right? So wherever they see it's profitable or better, they will move to those cloud providers. Okay, so then that's pretty much. So now what I'm gonna do, let me share my other screen and let me show you how the hypervisor look like. How do you install the okay, so stop share. Okay, so I hope you all can see my screen. Uh, Now what I've done is I logged into Azure portal. So this is how an Azure portal will look like. So URL is this portal.azure.com. Okay. So this is a URL that you actually access. So this is how the Azure portal will look like. Of course, I'm gonna give you these. Of course, I'm going to give you these details later on, but now I'm going to show you how the hypervisor will look like. Okay, to do that setup, what I'm going to do, I have one VM. Let me see if I can start this. So, because to portray this, I don't have a physical server to show you hypervisor. What I'm doing is I'm creating one VM. Inside a VM itself, I'm going to show you a hypervisor. How does that look like? This is still starting. Yeah, don't worry about these, even if you don't understand, because my goal is just to give you some introduction. But your actual Azure course will start from not from today. It will start from fourth day onwards. So don't worry, even if you don't understand much. Just need to understand the concept. That's it. Okay, it says it started, but I need this inside. Okay. So now let us try to connect to this server. Okay. So Now we have logged into the server. So what I'm gonna show you is, so this is how I logged in, what I created. You just forget about that. So we are into the server. Inside a server, how the hypervisor, uh, virtualization will look like. That's what I'm going to show you. So this is a server. So on this server, you have a hypervisor. You can search it. Hyper-V. So typically, I'll show you how you will enable this. So it seems like Hyper-V is not enabled. So you have turn on Windows features, and so you have to click on this option. So here you see one option, add roles and features. Click on add roles and features. Okay, so here you have an option, Hyper-V option, hypervisor. So you are enabling this feature, this role. Then you will move next. So in this location, let me see if I have any other. In this location, your virtual disk will be stored. Okay, I have temporary drive, so I can use this temporary drive, D drive. It's not suggestible to use D drive. I'll tell you why later. But just only to showcase, I'm using this. So I'm saying restart the server automatically if required. So this is how. So this process I'm doing on a VM actually, but same process you can do on a physical server to enable Hyper-V feature. And once it is enabled, then I'll show you how you can create a VM uh, inside a server. So on top of a server, how you can create a VM. Yeah, and let's give it a few minutes. It is still installing. Okay, it's restarting the server. It takes few minutes. After that, we'll again reconnect. Okay, still not able to connect. So it takes time. Maybe it is still booting up. Now you can search with Hyper-V. So this installation is complete now. And you see there is one icon called Hyper-V. And if you right click here, you see Hyper-V Manager. Yeah, this is how it look like. And this is where you create a virtual VM. So how do you create it? So you, if you right click, you'll see an option, create an option. Click on virtual machine. So this is where you will actually first of all to create this you need some or this ISO image. Okay, if you don't have ISO image, you will not be able to create. But you typically need one ISO image. So for that, you can actually download that from the internet. So we can take some smaller one. Maybe instead of installing Windows, we can install Linux one. So let's download one Linux ISO image and let's install that. I'll say Ubuntu. Okay, I'm installing this. I'm downloading this. It's a 3.1 GB. Let's see how fast this download completes. Looks like this download is going to take some time. Okay. So in the meantime, you can create this VM. How you can create a VM is just right click, create a virtual machine. Next, you can give some name. I'll say test VM, something like that. You can store, I will choose to store in the drive generation. So this is where you assign a memory. Let's say you want to assign 4096 as a 4 GB memory you are assigning to this. And you want to connect to VM, you can connect to the network. And this is where your disk will be stored. So this disk size, I want to keep it short, 16 GB or maybe 10 GB is enough. So this is actually your disk. As I said, in virtualization, everything is like a virtualized files only. So this hard disk is .vhdx. So that's how the disk will look like. So we are just creating a VM, but we are not installing the operating system yet. So this will just only create a VM. So you see a VM is created, but in powered off state. It has nothing available right now. But if you go to your D drive here, you will see one VHD file created. So this is how the file will look like. So if you delete this, your VM is deleted. So everything depends on this one. Okay. Let's see where is the download, how much you're able to focus. Looks like the download will take time, probably. So maybe I'll show this tomorrow because I don't know how long this will take. But tomorrow I will actually show you. Uh, I'll let this download complete. Tomorrow we'll create a VM. Then I will move on to next topic. So before I wind up, any other questions that you guys have?
Yeah, hi Shankar, Balu here.
Yeah.
So for practicing Azure in our local system, so what are the softwares we need to download and we need to install?
Yeah, I'll tell you those. Maybe I think fourth day or fifth day I'll cover this.
Okay.
So yeah, I mean I'll teach you those. I mean how to create a free trial and all that. I'll show you in the screen share. Maybe I think once I complete the basics, then I'll show you that.
Okay, Shankar.
Okay. Any other questions?
So for a better understanding of Azure, uh, do we have a very good knowledge on virtualization concepts or something like that?
You don't really have to have a very good knowledge. You just need to have a basic understanding about virtualization.
Okay, this virtualization is not applicable on this Azure, right? I mean, having a knowledge is enough. Not that we have to work on virtualization for a better Azure work.
Correct. You just need an understanding. You don't really have to be an expert in virtualization. You don't
Oh,
do any virtualization as such. Just need to know how things are working in the background. That's it.
okay, okay.
Okay. Any other questions, please? Tomorrow I will cover networking concepts, IP addressing and all that. And before I cover that, I will show you this VM creation also. Okay. Well, if there are no other questions, we'll wind up for today. And see you all tomorrow. Thanks everyone.
Hello.
Take care. Yeah. Right.
Uh, Here I have one doubt. Means Azure deals with virtual or virtual machines, or only it's a per practice we are creating.
Azure deals with virtual machines only. So, I mean, you create VMs only in Azure. You don't create physical servers, right?
Yeah, okay. Clouds deals with virtual.
Correct. All cloud providers, AWS, GCP, everything they use virtual machines.
Okay, thank
Okay, guys. Thank you all. See you all tomorrow. See you.